to Q&A number 6. So we're gonna dive right into questions. Question number 1. I have a diastasis that I've been working to close since I had my twins 2 years ago. When I wake up in the morning and check, it's about 1 finger width apart with my muscles hugging around my finger, so basically closed. At the end of the day, I will check and it's about 2 to 2.5 finger widths apart. Why is it opening throughout the day, and how can I get it to the point where it stays closed? Also, I notice that my gap is a little worse after lifting, even if I don't see any doming. Should I discontinue lifting? Okay, so never discontinue lifting. Maybe we might change some of the things you're doing, but lifting is so great for your muscle mass, your bone density, just basically everything down the road. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why this happens and what's going on. All right, first off, you do have a strip of fascia that sits between the muscles. So closed is anything technically under 2.5 fingers. So anything under 2.5 finger widths is not considered diastasis. It's just considered a normal fascial width. So just keep that in mind for how you're thinking about your body. So there can be some normal width there. It's just a normal part of it. Now, when I see these diastasis change basically over the course of a day, just like I would see maybe prolapse or pelvic floor issues change over the course of a day, it's usually due to muscle fatigue, right? So we can't expect our muscles to show up to the same degree all the time, all day. I mean, they're gonna get tired, right? So you wake up first thing in the morning, your abs are fresh. They're like, let me bring these two sides of my rectus muscle together and hug that finger. And then by the end of the day, they're like, I'm tired. I need to sit on the couch, put my feet up, and have somebody bring me a glass of wine. Okay, so when we look at muscle, how the muscle is showing up, muscle strength, resting tone of the muscle, I think to some degree, a little bit of fatigue as the day goes through is completely normal, especially if during the day you work out at all, or you try to have good posture, because good posture naturally gets those TAs on board. Now, let's talk about width versus depth, because the one thing you didn't mention to me is how squishy you were versus firm. So are you firm in the morning and firm in the evening, and you just get a little bit of a difference in width, or does the squishiness change? Because width is more related to rectus abdominis, that six-pack muscle, and squishiness is more related to TA, transverse abdominal strength. All right, so we've got different layers within that fascia, and the TAs come in underneath the rectus and form that underneath layer, and that's what gives it that nice trampoline feel. Okay, so that's one thing to check, because that might give us more clues as to what's going on with your workouts and how we can tailor them. Now, the thing I want you to think about when it comes to exercise is I like to run a little bit of a challenge to see how we're handling exercise. So I get this a lot with prolapse patients that come in, ladies trying to figure out, is my exercise doing harm? Is it doing good? Just because something is a little bit worse doesn't mean your workout is necessarily making you worse. Because if it is truly muscle fatigue, and I consider diastasis exactly the same as prolapse, so which is why I'm using those two interchangeably. You've got to give in your fascial system, and you need muscles to come in and support you. So essentially, to me, they're basically the same thing. We're working on a pressure management problem on fascia. Okay, so back to what I was saying about exercise and after. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you just to warm up with your exercises. Test while you do each one, maybe do 1 set of 5 and see how you feel after. So if you feel really great after that, then it's probably just fatigue. If you feel a little bit worse after doing not quite as many as your normal workout, then that could mean that you're stressing your body in a way that it doesn't like, so it's not responding well. Okay, so maybe you don't see any doming, but the pressure management there still isn't good. So just be sure to check for that doming the whole time, especially on that last set when you get tired. All right, and then if you feel like, okay, while I did my front planks and I did all these other ab exercises, my diastasis felt amazing. I felt good tension. Everything was loading well. There was no bulging, tenting, or doming out of that midline. There was no sinking in or forming a big crevice while I was doing my ab exercises, but I still feel a little worse after. But the next day, I am great again. Then I'm just gonna say that's fatigue, and that is amazing. Keep fatiguing out your muscular system. You will continue to get stronger. You will, over time, you will notice less of that kind of rebound. Things look a little bit worse, and I almost feel like sometimes this is just part of the process. If you're not making yourself feel a little bit worse after, as far as when you check it, if the muscles aren't fatigued and don't feel like they can all show up quite as readily right after your workout, then maybe your workout wasn't quite hard enough. Maybe you weren't overloading enough. So that's something to keep in mind. I find that the people who struggle with recovery of diastasis and recovery of prolapse have a hard time finding that balance of stressing their system just enough to produce the changes that we want to produce within that fascial system. They either stress too much, which then everything bulges out because they've got pressure management problems, or they don't stress it quite enough to cause remodeling to happen. Our tissues need stress to make remodeling happen. Okay, so give that a shot. Keep that in mind and see if you think maybe it's just fatigue, or it could be how you're loading, but it doesn't sound like it. So it sounds a lot like fatigue, which means you're probably on the right track. Question number 2. How long after naturally healing a bladder prolapse should you wait to conceive the first time? Okay, so this is not a question I can really answer. It goes back to that age-old question: is there really a great time to get pregnant? And yeah, sometimes there is, but for a lot of people that end up getting pregnant, no one ever feels ready, I guess is what I'm saying. And so when you're dealing with something like prolapse, you may not ever feel ready, or you might. I've had a lot of women get pregnant after having prolapse and after having that, and they've had great outcomes. One woman even had improved prolapse after, which was amazing, because they kept working through their pregnancy. They kept working on their pelvic floor through their pregnancy. So it doesn't have to stop just because you get pregnant. And if you think about delivery, you've got the baby blocking the birth canal, which means it holds in the pelvic organs from the front and the back, which can be beneficial for making prolapse worse during delivery. Women tend not to tear quite as much with subsequent pregnancies, which can be helpful as well once you pave that pathway. I've got a great video interview that I did with my mentor. I'm going to link that here for you to watch because it's just great. I mean, it's all about prolapse, getting pregnant again with prolapse and delivery. So I think you'll really enjoy that. Okay, question number 3 is, what kind of core work helps for low back pain post C-section? All right, so this is kind of one of those questions where I'd love to see you move. I'm not exactly sure. So the realm of physical therapy, if there were just simply like, do these 3 exercises for this thing, then we could just give everybody a handout and we wouldn't need a profession. So there is something called overbracing. There is some people overly brace or overly tense, and that is part of what causes their pain. And so when they come into rehab, we actually teach them how to not contract their abdominals quite so hard to help their back pain, which I know is a crazy thing to say. So I'm not necessarily sure that you should even do more core work. But if you feel like you're on that track, then we'll go with that. So step 1 would be to make sure your C-section scar moves. So make sure the tissue moves up and down, make sure it moves side to side, make sure it moves in circles. We want to work on kind of separating out those layers, getting that to move. Step number 2 is to find your abs and mentally connect with them. So a lot of times whenever you enter an area like a C-section, then all your core muscles just kind of shut off. The same thing can happen with any type of like appendectomy or anything like that. So it's like anytime we invade the abdominal wall, the muscles are like, shock, I'm gonna quit working. So this could be part of what happened. So you might need a lot more connecting and mental training to get back into that. So I want you to start very slowly and gently, focus on breathing. And the biggest takeaway is not the exact exercise per se, even though, you know, there's lots of ideas out there, but it's not the exact exercise, but it's how you do it. So what I want you to do is take a hand, place it on your back, on your paraspinal muscle. And I want you to do that when you're on your back doing like a dead bug or something simple like that. And I want you to feel that paraspinal muscle. Okay, these are the big ropey muscles that run up and down either side of your spine. So feel that paraspinal muscle, and then I want you to contract your abs like you're gonna brace to do a dead bug or something like that, or exhale hard, contracting your abs. Feel that paraspinal. Does it stay soft and squishy, or does it get firm and tense? And so what that's gonna tell you is every time you contract your abs to do ab work, are you contracting your back? which would then perpetuate your back pain. Okay, so that's one of the tips that I want to leave you with that I think could be actionable right now for you, for working on getting your back pain, core work for working on back pain. Okay, then eventually, once you get your abs back on board, get your breathing system working well, getting that diaphragm working, I would work on moving in different planes of motion. I think that would be really helpful. But if your back contracts with your abs, then it's not going to really matter what you do because you're going to keep having that tension. All right, the other thing to really work on is lots of breathing work, lots of inhales into your back to help to get it to release that way. Okay, question number 4. I'm 38 and fairly fit. Every time I do mountain climbers, even if I slow them down, my hip pops. It doesn't hurt, but seems like something's going wrong. If there's no pain, is it nothing to worry about? Okay, so worry is a really strong word. I think that if things are popping in the body and it's not a normal pop, that could be a sign that your alignment isn't that great. Now, whether that's something that catches up with you or not, I have no idea. You could do them, you could have popping for the rest of your life, maybe it won't cause any pain, but maybe it will. So I think it's one of those things that I really like to address. All right, so what I want you to think about is, first off, think about what popping is. Popping is usually tendon popping over a soft tissue structure like a bursa sac. So what I want you to do is lie on your back and feel your pelvis, okay? I want you to feel both sides, and I want you to feel kind of the top. I'm gonna rest your hands on your ASIS. Do they feel like they're at the same level, or do you feel like maybe one is shifted up a little bit more than the other? So that could tell you that maybe your pelvis is a little bit out of alignment, which is telling you you have a strength imbalance, all right? Maybe a hamstring isn't showing up quite like it should. Maybe a gluteus is taking a little vacation. Maybe one side of your abs are not working quite as hard as the other side, and so that's creating a pull on your pelvis. And what we want to do is sort that out, fix the muscle strengthening that needs to happen on one side versus the other, and then work on how your alignment is going into that exercise. So my other question for you, my last question is, do you have any other issues? Do you have any occasional SI pain? Do you have any knee pain? Have you ever had plantar fasciitis? So what I would want to do is dive a little bit deeper into this and see, do you have anything else going on? Because maybe that could give us some more clues, or is it truly just some isolated popping? So usually when I dig a little deeper, I'm like, oh yeah, I get knee pain when I walk up and down stairs a lot, or you know, I get plantar fasciitis every few months if I try to run. So there comes these other things that seem to just come out when I start digging, and so there is usually more underneath that surface that needs to be looked at. Okay, question number 5. How to naturally deal with a menopause weight gain. Okay, this question is way outside my scope of practice. Just so far out that I shouldn't even touch it at all. But, famous last words, right? I'm gonna touch it a little bit. I have a family history of early menopause. I'm starting into early menopause. Yay, go me. Oh, I'm not old. And so the things that I've realized that have helped me, which is all I can share because I do not have a scope of practice in this area. I got all of my levels of things tested. My zinc was really low. Turns out wasn't producing enough stomach acid because you guessed it, stress. Who sits and chews all of their food really, really well and relaxes during every meal with small children? Okay, anyway, with that aside, I've been working on relaxing more, a lot more meditation, really working on chewing my food well, taking some supplements to help with that. But I find that those hormone fluctuations do tend to ease off when I can decrease the stress in my life, which then plays into weight gain as well. So that is all I'm gonna throw at you for advice, and then you can find like a naturopathic doctor or something like that to work with that has a lot better scope of practice for this sort of stuff that can give you more ideas. All right, well, hopefully that's helpful. Decrease stress, right? And then the answer to everything. All right, question number 6, how important is strengthening feet for hip support? I overpronate and have hip bursitis. Okay, so I get what you're asking here. I can't give you an exact percentage, but I can say it is really, really, really important because if your foot, pronation is good. Control through pronation is good. Being able to come out of pronation is good. So pronation in and of itself is not a bad thing. Overpronation, hanging out in pronation, lack of control in pronation, who do you think has to pick up the slack? So if you don't have the strength in the foot and you're looking at those ground reaction forces, we look up the chain. The only other structure that it can help control that foot arch dropping is your hip. So when your foot, when maybe your feet turn out and your arches collapse, then your glute medius and your hip, which sits right on top of that bursa sac area, it's going to overwork. It's going to be tight. It's going to be full of trigger points. And that's all because it's trying to compensate for your feet. So I would say yes, very important. And great question, thinking about that and thinking about that kinetic chain for helping maybe a chronic hip issue looking somewhere else other than the hip. The other thing I will mention is that our hips are also a product of our abdominal wall and what's going on there. Not necessarily ab strength as much as our breathing system, our pelvic floor, our diaphragm, our balance that's happening there. So maybe look at that as well. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Thank you guys for joining me for another Q&A.